back to the movie pit, you beautiful bastards. It's your favorite cinematic corner, Dr. fucking Ghoulula, ready to perform another autopsy on a corpse of a film. Today's deceased told a hell of a summer, a 2023 comedy horror that crawled out of the minds of Stranger Things' Finn Wolfhard and his buddy Billy Bryk. Holy shit, when I heard these two youngsters were directing a throwback slasher, my decomposed heart skipped a beat. A campy homage to those glorious 80 seconds horror flicks I used to watch while hiding from my goddamn parents? Sign me the fuck up. But what we got instead is like expecting a chainsaw massacre and getting a paper cut. This motherfucking movie tries so hard to be the cool kid at the horror party, but ends up being that awkward dipshit in the corner wearing a Halloween costume from Walmart. Don't get me wrong, there's something here buried under a pile of missed opportunities and half-baked ideas. Let's dig into this bloody mess and see what the fuck went wrong at Camp Pineway. So let's get into this shit show of a plot, shall we? Hell of a Summer starts with the owners of Camp Pineway getting brutally murdered. One poor bastard gets an acoustic guitar shoved down his throat while the other takes a knife to the skull. Fucking metal, right? But don't get too excited, because that's about as graphic as this pussy-ass movie gets. 11 counselors show up early to this death trap, including our main character, Jason, a 24-year-old camp enthusiast who everyone mocks for being too fucking old to be there. Like, seriously, who gives a shit about his age? I've seen summer camp slashers with 30-year-old teens, for fuck's sake. The plot drags its ass through the standard slasher setup. Some note about an emergency, Jason taking charge, awkward sexual tension with his ex-girlfriend Claire, all while the killer in a devil mask starts picking these dipshits off one by one. But here's where the movie starts tripping over its own dick. Almost every goddamn kill happens off-screen. What the fuck is the point of a slasher if we don't see the slashing? One counselor gets her head in a fridge, another gets stabbed with a peanut butter-coated knife because of his allergy, which could have been a brilliant kill if we actually saw it happen. Instead, we get all the setup and none of the payoff. It's like foreplay without the fucking. The middle of the film is a clusterfuck of red herrings, with everyone suspecting poor awkward Jason because, I don't know, he's socially inept. Then comes the big killer reveal that's about as surprising as finding out water is wet. The killers turn out to be Demi and Mike, two attention-seeking assholes who staged this whole massacre for fucking social media fame. Are you shitting me? That's the best motive they could come up with? This movie desperately wants to be Scream meets Friday the 13th with a dash of Tucker and Dale versus Evil, but instead it's just a messy handjob to classic slashers that never reaches climax. The third act devolves into cabin fires, bow and arrow kills, and relationship resolutions that nobody gives two fucks about. By the time the survivors are reunited, you're left wondering why you didn't just rewatch Cabin in the Woods instead of this half-assed homage. Let's talk about these fucking characters, specifically why they're as memorable as a wet fart in a hurricane. At the center of this shit show is Jason Hochberg, played by Fred Hetchinger, the prototypical awkward social reject who, as the movie itself points out, we all knew in high school. If you're sitting there thinking, I didn't know anyone like that, congratulations, dickhead. You are that person. Jason is 24 years old and still hanging around a summer camp like it's his personal fucking salvation. The movie tries to make us care about this socially constipated man-child, but why should we? He has all the personality of a damp paper towel. His character arc consists entirely of awkward guy, gets slightly less awkward, and maybe gets the girl. Wow. Revolutionary. I'm shitting my pants with excitement. Speaking of the girl, Claire is his ex-girlfriend who's about as interesting as watching paint dry in slow motion. Their romantic tension has all the spark of a wet match in a dark cave. The rest of these counselors? Disposable meat sacks with names I couldn't remember if you put a fucking gun to my head. The killers themselves are the epitome of modern shallow douchebaggery, murdering people for fucking social media clout. It's like the writers grabbed the most obvious hacky commentary on Gen Z and said, "This is deep, right?" No, motherfuckers. It's about as deep as a kiddie pool filled with piss. What's most infuriating is how the film thinks it's being clever with these character types. The occult girl, the jock, the influencer, we've seen this shit a million times before and done a million times better. There's not a single counselor in this entire lineup that doesn't feel like they were created by an AI prompt that said, generate generic slasher victim. The humor that's supposed to come from these character interactions lands with all the grace of a drunk elephant attempting ballet. The filmmakers are clearly going for that awkward cringe comedy vibe, but there's a fucking difference between intentionally awkward and just plain bad writing. This movie doesn't seem to understand that distinction. Let's talk about the acting in this shit show, which ranges from surprisingly decent to what the fuck were they thinking. Fred Hetchinger as Jason Hochberg carries this movie on his scrawny little shoulders, and to be completely fucking honest, the dude's not half bad. He commits to the awkward loser shtick with such earnestness that you almost give a shit about his character. Hetchinger somehow manages to find nuance in a role that was written with all the depth of a puddle of piss on a hot sidewalk. Abby Quinn as Claire, on the other hand, is stuck in a thankless role as the ex-girlfriend who inevitably falls back in love with our protagonist. Quinn tries her damnedest to breathe life into this cardboard cutout, but Jesus fucking Christ, there's only so much you can do when your entire character motivation is, I used to date the weird guy and might again. Now let's talk about our wunderkind directors who decided to cast themselves. Finn Wolfhard, yes, the Stranger Things kid, plays Chris with all the subtlety of a brick through a window. His performance screams I directed this shit so I can act however the fuck I want. Billy Bryk as Bobby fares slightly better, but that's like saying getting punched in the face is better than getting kicked in the balls. Technically true, but neither's a good time. DeFaro Wunatai and Pardis Saremi as our killers, goddamn embarrassing. They oscillate between scenery-chewing madness and flatline delivery that would make a corpse seem animated by comparison. When your big villain reveal hinges on performances this inconsistent, your movie is absolutely fucked. The only person who seems to understand what movie they're in is Matthew Finlan as Ezra, who approaches his role with just the right level of self-awareness. When he gets an axe to the head, I was genuinely pissed because the movie just lost its most entertaining performer. The rest of the ensemble cast might as well be wearing shirts that say "Future Corpse" for all the impression they make. Let's talk about direction and visuals, which is where this movie really shows its balls, both in ambition and inexperience. Finn Wolfhard and Billy Bryk deserve some fucking credit for even attempting to direct a feature film while they're still young enough to get carded buying lottery tickets. But holy shit, their inexperience bleeds through every goddamn frame like a freshly stabbed counselor. The directing is exactly what you'd expect from two kids who grew up watching horror movies and thought, fuck it, we can do that. Sometimes they absolutely can, and other times you're left wondering if they just handed the camera to the craft services guy while they went to take a piss. Their shot composition occasionally shows flashes of actual talent, like the reveal of Miley's severed head in the fridge, but then immediately reverts to basic bitch filmmaking that wouldn't impress a film school dropout. Christopher Bonnell's cinematography is the one thing keeping this visual shit show from completely falling apart. The Camp Pineway setting is actually shot with some atmospheric competence. The lakeside murder that opens the film has this gorgeous moonlit quality that made me think I was in for something special. What a motherfucking tease that turned out to be. Bonnell knows how to frame a horror scene when given the chance, but it feels like the directors kept yanking the leash every time he tried to do something interesting. The lighting deserves a special mention for being aggressively inconsistent. Some night scenes are moody as fuck with just enough visibility to create tension, while others are so goddamn dark you'd think the production couldn't afford to pay their electric bill. And when they attempt that classic slasher film blue-tinted night look, Jesus Christ, it's like they discovered color grading yesterday and decided to crank that shit to 11. The visual effects, what little there are, look like they were done by someone who just discovered Adobe After Effects and thought, how hard could this be? The answer is apparently very fucking hard. When we finally get some blood splatter, it looks about as convincing as ketchup at a middle school Halloween party. Let's talk about the gore factor, because this is where Hell of a Summer really shits the bed. For a fucking slasher film, this movie is about as bloody as a Disney Channel original. I was sitting there with my popcorn, waiting for some creative dismemberment or at least a decent fucking kill scene, and what do I get? A bunch of teasing bullshit where almost everything happens off screen. Are you fucking kidding me? The movie has the balls to show us a note about some guy getting an acoustic guitar shoved down his throat. and then doesn't even have the decency to show us how that would actually work. Motherfucker, that's a kill I want to see. Instead, we get the aftermath or some shadow play like we're watching goddamn puppet theater. And when we do get an on-screen death, it's so fucking tame it's embarrassing. A knife to the skull? That's kindergarten shit. I wanted to see some intestines, some creative use of camp equipment, maybe a fucking boat motor to the face. But no, these filmmakers chicken out harder than a vegan at KFC. The peanut butter death could have been brilliantly fucked up, but they play it safe. Even when they finally let us see something, like the arrow through Demi's eye, it's so fucking sanitized you'd think they were trying to get a PG-13 rating. For a movie supposedly paying homage to 80 Seconds horror, they completely forgot that those films showed us everything in glorious, disgusting detail. Tom Savini would shit himself laughing at this bloodless wonder. This isn't homage, it's horror movie blue balls. Now let's get into the fucking sound design and music, shall we? Jay McCarroll's score for Hell of a Summer is about as memorable as a goddamn elevator ride. The soundtrack sits in this weird limbo between trying to be nostalgic for classic slashers and attempting some quirky indie bullshit that doesn't commit to either direction. When the tension should be ramping up, the music just kinda hangs there like a limp dick, never quite giving us that heart-pounding intensity a proper slasher deserves. The stings and stabs during kill scenes feel like McCarroll was afraid to wake up the neighbors. Come on, motherfucker, this is horror. Make me jump out of my fucking seat. The sound design isn't much better. For a movie set in a creepy-ass camp in the woods, they completely waste the ambient potential. Where's the unsettling creak of cabin floors? The distant, ominous sounds that make you think something's watching from the trees? Instead, we get this sterile, clean audio that sounds like it was recorded in someone's living room. The one place the audio somewhat delivers is during the comedy bits, where the timing of certain sound effects actually helps land some of the darkly humorous moments. But even then, it feels like they're pulling their punches, afraid to go too intense or too absurd. The missed opportunity here is fucking criminal. A proper sound design could have elevated this mediocre slasher into something genuinely unnerving, but instead we get this half-assed audio landscape that's as forgettable as the characters' names. So how did this cinematic shitshow fare with critics and audiences? About as well as you'd fucking expect. The film is currently sitting at a piss-poor 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. With critics divided on whether this thing is an ambitious freshman effort or a complete waste of celluloid. Metacritic's 54 out of 100 basically translates to meh, whatever in critical speak. You know what's really fucking telling? The critical consensus reads, Hell of a Summer shows some promising ingenuity from its young directorial duo, but its lack of tonal cohesion also indicates some room for improvement. That's reviewer speak for these kids might make something decent someday if they get their shit together. The audience reaction has been marginally better, with Post-Track reporting an 87% positive score, which honestly makes me question what the fuck these people were watching. Were they just impressed that the Stranger Things kid made a movie that doesn't completely suck ass? To be fair, audiences aren't entirely wrong. There are moments of genuine potential buried in this mess. The film occasionally nails that sweet spot between horror and comedy that films like Shaun of the Dead perfected. But those moments are like finding a 20 in your winter coat. A nice surprise surrounded by a bunch of fucking lint and old receipts. Some critics praised Wolfhard and Bryk's dedication to the slasher genre, while others rightfully called out the shallow characterization and predictable plot turns. The commercial performance wasn't stellar either, with an opening weekend of just $1.8 million. Though for a micro-budget slasher from first-time directors, that's not completely embarrassing. What's clear from the reception is that nobody thinks this is a masterpiece, but nobody thinks it's complete garbage either. It exists in that frustrating middle ground of mediocrity that's almost worse than being outright terrible. Well, fuck me sideways. After all that bitching and moaning, I've got to admit that Hell of a Summer isn't a complete dumpster fire. It's more like a trash can that someone accidentally lit a cigarette in, smoldering with wasted potential rather than fully ablaze with awfulness. Look, I've shit all over this movie for the past 12 minutes, but truth be told, it's still somewhat goddamn entertaining. The kills might be off-screen, the characters might be forgettable as fuck, and the plot might be thinner than gas station toilet paper. But there's something endearing about watching these young filmmakers swing for the fences and occasionally connect. So what's the final verdict? A generous 6 out of 10 stars. And yes, that's fucking generous. The film deserves points for its nostalgic nods to 80s horror, some decent comedic beats, and the sheer audacity of 2 kids in their early 20s convincing people to give them money to make this shit. What doesn't work? The total whiplash, the lack of gore, the forgettable characters, and that absolutely limp-dick killer reveal. It's like they built up to a massive orgasm and then just rolled over and fell asleep. But hey, there's absolutely an audience for this kind of shit somewhere out there. Maybe you're a diehard Finn Wolfhard fan. Maybe you're a slasher completionist who needs to see every fucking entry in the genre. Maybe you just enjoy watching movies that feel like they were written during a Red Bull-fueled all-nighter in a college dorm room. This is Dr. Ghoulula signing off from the movie pit. Remember, in the dark theater of life, we're all just waiting for the next jump scare. And I'll be there, in the shadows, when the next horror flick drops its putrid carcass into theaters. Sweet screams, my darlings. And as always, till next time, kiddies.